We are back. We are back. We are back. I'm Chris Drew from Menace to Sports. That's my guy, Ron, from Best Damn Media. Ron, the playoff rankings came out, so we got to be here to provide more Ohio State content. This time, a little bit of a different look at things, huh?
Yeah, number one. It feels good to be on top. Busy day for us. Second show of the day for each of us. My show a little less eventful than yours, but man, we are here on Bleacher Report, and the Buckeyes are number one in the country.
Yeah, best team in America, right? That's what that means. I did find it interesting because, a lot of people, the general consensus is maybe Ohio State has not looked like the best team all year, but they deserve to be one all year. And so that meant something to me, at least a little bit. I do like what Boo Kerrigan said when talking about Ohio State. He was like, their resume and that defense is the reason we have them number one. I do think it is the most dominant unit in all college football currently. And because of that, they say what? Defense travels, and the old heads say defense wins championships. Now, up until this year, I said, nah, defense doesn't win championships. Offense does. But this year, now that Ohio State has the defense, I'm ready to kind of jump on board with that.
Yeah, you talked about being nervous about Ohio State not landing at number one because even despite having the best resume in the country, sometimes the eye test and game control doesn't really lean in the Buckeyes' favor. And you thought with some of the close matchups and some of the struggles that we had early on offense might hold us back. But it sounds like the eye test from people seeing our defense and believing that from what they've seen on film that it's the best defense in the country, that the eye test might have gotten the Buckeyes over the hump in addition to their resume.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I know it's hard for each and every individual to kind of value the same things when looking at a quote-unquote eye test. For me, at least, eye test always meant blowouts, but I guess in a vacuum, when you look at it, it's okay because other people's eye test might include, oh, goodness, we're watching around. We don't see other teams scoring a lot of points, and you and I have held true to the same motto ever since kind of leading up to that Notre Dame game. I don't think teams will be able to easily or honestly comfortably score 17 on Ohio State. And I think Ohio State with Marvin Harrison Jr., with Emeka Egbuka, assuming he returns, with Travion Henderson, and the offensive line that is gelling, can score more than 17. So I'm excited to look at each of these matchups and see how individually how we view each team stacks up against Ohio State.
Absolutely. I'm ready to get into it.
All right, I want to start with Bama. Obviously, every time Bama plays Ohio State, it's a huge deal. Two mega brands in all of college football. Bama this year, honestly, they're a little bit similar to Ohio State in terms of maybe their offense has not had crazy outputs, and their defense has been really, really good. If you look at some of the big-time players, Jalen Milroe, who has made enormous strides and is probably going to be second in the nation in yards per attempt, which is absurd to think about. And then when you add more context, he might even be top 15 all time in yards per attempt. That's a quarterback that maybe I didn't think could throw the ball, very well early. And now here we are, and he is an improving quarterback. What is your confidence level when looking at, or today at least, how do you feel like Ohio State would stack up against Alabama?
It's funny that we're having this conversation because the last time we did an instant reaction, I was talking about teams that I fear Ohio State playing in the playoff, and I said Alabama just because of the logo, man. At the bare minimum, they're going to show up, be physical, and play great defense. You see Caleb Downs on the graphic, a huge Buckeye target that the Buckeyes missed out on, and is balling out as a true freshman. And during that instant reaction, everybody's like, I don't think the Buckeyes are going to see Alabama. They're losing right now to Tennessee, and they battled back and ended up getting that win. And it seems like every time you're ready to count Alabama out, they pop their head up and remind you, we are still that logo. So yeah. I have worries about Ohio State matching up. While I don't think their offense presents a huge challenge for the Buckeyes, they do have the one thing that does worry us and that we talk about every game. Are the Buckeyes able to limit the explosive play? And I think Jermaine Burton and Jalen Milroe are both good for explosive plays. So if the Buckeyes are struggling on offense, I feel like if they get enough attempts and the Buckeyes are slow on offense, that Alabama might be able to take advantage of this defense with some explosive plays.
That would be an interesting game because the Alabama strength has been the deep ball. That's kind of how they've been able to open things up, and that lines up with Ohio State's strength, and they've been able to limit the big plays. I mean, Jermaine Burton averaging over 20 yards a catch is absurd, and Jalen Milroe averaging over 10 yards per attempt is absurd. They need to use the long ball, and I think that'd be a really, really big-time matchup. Honestly, Jermaine Burton versus a guy in Denzel Burks, who's a Thorpe, Award finalist. So That'd be an interesting game. And then also, like, on the defensive side of the ball, you talked about him. Caleb Downs leads the team in tackles and interceptions as a true freshman. That would be incredible. I mean, Kool-Aid McKinstry, who I think is a talented corner. I have him as the best in America. Him against Marvin Harrison Jr. And then Dallas Turner. I mean, this Bama team has been able to generate 29 sacks this year, which is up in the top threshold. And Dallas Turner has 8 of them. So that would be a battle. I do think, though, I would be pretty confident that Ohio State would beat them based on the sole fact that I don't think Bama would be able to make enough routine plays to drive down the field to win the game. Bama has relied on big plays to kick off drives, and Milroe, while he has been good at the deep ball, he's been really bad in kind of those other areas of the field and has had turnover-worthy throws and tends to hold on to the ball a lot. I believe he's taken over 7 coverage sacks this year.
We saw Alabama's tackles struggle early in the season. We know there are a lot of big guys. Most of them are in the 6'5" to 6'8" range, around the 340 to 360. Do you think some are like the speed on the edge? JTT's get off has been immaculate this year. Do you think that our defensive ends would be able to cause issues for Alabama's tackles since they are bigger and we do have a little bit more speed on the edge?
I do, and I also think they'd be able to pick on Caden Proctor with some of the assignment stuff. Now, Caden is good. He's big. Got a little bit slower feet, but if you run some stunts in there with Sonny Styles, you could see situations where the Ohio State speed on the edge could end up getting home, at least to fluster Jalen a little bit. But again, Jalen's a really, really big-time athlete. Your confidence level that Ohio State would be able to beat Alabama?
7?
7 out of 10?
I would still lean on the defense being able to get it done, but with the struggles that we've seen with Kyle McCord, Kyle McCord matching up against Alabama defense is not a matchup that I'm dreaming about.
Yeah, it does feel like that would be kind of a lower defensive battle. Want to jump to the team that beat Bama, Texas. Steve Sarkisian's Texas team on offense, we know about it. Quinn Ewers, the former Buckeye, big-time player. I mean, he's injured right now, but when he is healthy, he's a really good player. And this Texas passing attack is definitely dangerous. I mean, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Quinn Ewers, they are able to put up points in bunches, and they also have Jatavian Sanders, who right now is averaging over 17 yards a catch. That's a tight end that is up there with Cade Stover in terms of production.
The Texas team is a tricky situation for me because I have 2 things that I stick by, and they're contradicting each other when it comes to analyzing this game. I'm a big believer in rankings when kids are super young. If you tell me a kid when he's 15 is going to be the greatest ever, I'm going to believe it until that guy is bagging groceries. So I'm still a him Ewers guy and big believer in Quinn Ewers, but I also have a saying that if you've accepted a transfer from the 2021 Ohio State defense, you cannot win a national championship because that is one of the worst defenses we've seen in Ohio State history. Texas falls in that category. Yeah. I am worried about Texas's ability to stop Ohio State. While I do think that Texas has the explosion on offense to challenge them and the big play ability, Quinn Ewers is also prone to throw interceptions and make mistakes, and I feel like
he's got a fumble problem, Ron.
He would have to play too clean of a game against the Buckeyes, and I just don't see it against a defense that is that elite. While I do think they do have the weapons to challenge them on the edge, I don't think they have the combination of speed on the edge on offense and enough of a challenge on defense to hold this Ohio State's offense. I think the running game would be able to get going, and I feel like Kyle McCord would have a much better chance going against this Texas defense than he would the Alabama defense with the way Alabama's playing at the moment.
And honestly, it's funny, these first 2 games we're talking about, the Bama game and the Texas game, would both be kind of, quote-unquote, a get-back for Ryan Day. Remember, Sark was the OC for Bama in the national title game that Ryan Day ended up losing, and now he's the head coach at Bama. I think with a month's prep, you could see an Ohio State team in a semifinal game against this Texas team be able to score the 34 that Oklahoma was able to score on them. But on the flip side, I do think Sark with a month prep is really freaking good. So honestly, Texas scares me more than Alabama does. On our neutral site, though, I still would pick Ohio State. I think that Oklahoma blunder, I can't get out of my head, given that they were in control of that game, and in that 2-minute drive, they could not stop any Oklahoma skill. And I think it's safe to say that the Ohio State skill is far better than the Oklahoma skill.
You brought up Sark on after bowl prep and how much time he would have to prepare. I still have nightmares of Devontae Smith running through our secondary. So that is not a matchup that I would be particularly interested. It seems like Texas is going to be on the outside looking in, but if they do find a way to sneak in, I feel like they would be a formidable opponent for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and the question, would Ohio State hold Texas under 17? Houston scored 24, Bama scored 24, OU scored 34. I think Ohio State could score at least 24. Do you think Texas would score 20 over 17?
I feel like it would all depend on how many interceptions Quinn Ewers threw.
Yeah.
If it's under 2, I think, yes, they score more than 17 points. If it's over 2, I do not. I think he has the ability to win the game, but also throw them out of the game as well.
And I do think the fact that Texas doesn't have a great pass rush would end up helping Kyle McCord and Ohio State. They have nobody on the team that has more than 3 sacks, and they only have 19 total sacks on the year, while schools like Bama have about 30. Oregon, man. Oregon. Bo freaking Nix has been really exceptional this year. 21 touchdowns, 1 interception. He leads the nation in quarterback and completion percentage. He's still in the Heisman race, even though he's not the favorite anymore. I mean, this is the most complete team in the country, maybe. They're definitely the most complete of the one-loss teams. This is the most concerning to me of the one-loss teams if Ohio State had to play them today. Troy Franklin having the most underrated receiver season in the country right now, 867 yards, 9 touchdowns, averaging about 17 yards per play, per catch. This would be a great game.
Absolutely. Oregon's a team that definitely worries me. Like you said, we've actually said this all season. We think that Oregon's the most complete team on both sides of the ball, and it's crazy that they have 1 loss. And we talked about our biggest worries matching up against the Buckeyes were teams in the Pac-12, but we assumed that this conference would cannibalize itself, and it looks like we're on the path for them to do that. While I think that Oregon would be a great matchup for the Buckeyes, it's looking like, again, they're a part of this group of 1-loss teams that may be on the outside looking in, because that conference was just so difficult this year. And it's crazy to see potentially the best conference in college football be gone after this year.
No, it's wild. And one of the things I have a difficult time gauging with Oregon is how physical they are as a football team. Because right now, when they're in the Pac-12, like, they've been able to really push back a lot of these Pac-12 teams, but also how physical are the other Pac-12 teams?
Well, if I was an Oregon fan listening to this right now, I would remind 2 Buckeye fans sitting here questioning the physicality that last time that they were in Columbus, they left a rubber duck on the block O to remind us that we were soft.
They did do that. Another get-back game. These first 3 games are all get-back games from Ryan Day.
That's what I'm saying. And they had 2 of their best players sitting out of that game. I mean, Oregon was able to beat Ohio State last time that they faced off in Columbus with a single play. So much so that Oregon was passing that play around to other teams in college football because it was so successful against the Buckeyes. And we saw tons of teams run it again later in that year. So while I hear you about questioning their physicality, I've seen this movie before, and we've questioned their physicality before, and they've come to Columbus and punched us right in the mouth.
and I think this is a more physical Oregon team than they were before, and that was obviously the Mario Cristobal team. Ron, they've scored over 30 in every game this year. They have 4 games over 40, including an 81 burger with some extra cheese. That's how good Oregon is. Oregon is the one-loss team that if there was a death beam pointed at me and said, Ohio State, Oregon, neutral field, who you picking? I might pick Oregon. I like Bo Nix. I like Troy Franklin. I like Dan Lanning in the style of aggression. And right now, at least to date, Ohio State hasn't shown me enough to suggest they'd be able to score with Oregon. Now, Ohio State 100% healthy?
That's 100% healthy, including the quarterback room?
Yeah. Slick, I mean, I do think it would take Devin Brown, who to me is very Bo Nix-like in his approach, to really open this thing up. So I really would like Oregon in this game. I think Oregon is so complete, and outside of a coaching blunder, I think they are undefeated right now. But Dan Lanning got a little bit too aggressive against Washington.
Absolutely. I think the Buckeyes are going to need to figure out some things at quarterback, whether that be improving Kyle McCord's play or putting in another quarterback to elevate this offense. I do think Oregon, with the success that they've seen, all of the 30 bombs that they put up, it would be difficult for the Buckeyes to hold them under 17. I don't know if they would be able to keep them under the magical number of 17, but again, even if we extend it past 17, I don't see them getting over 24 on this defense. This defense is just too stout. And one of the things that I feel like people don't account for with this defense is the mental reaction that teams have to have when they see their team fail on a 3-and-out or just get stopped by a defense. I asked Penn State fans that going into the game, if you see a bunch of 3-and-outs or your offense struggles early, how do they respond to that mentally? And I know we haven't seen the Buckeyes be able to jump out on teams early, but if they find a way to figure things out on offense and are able to get these leads on teams, I'm interested to see how they respond matching up against a defense as tough as the Buckeyes.
Yeah, it'd be a great matchup. Oregon, Ohio State. I mean, if you look at Denzel Burke versus Troy Franklin, I mean, those are two guys that are going to be NFL players for a while now. So that's looking at that one. That's kind of how I would view that. Washington, who may have the Heisman frontrunner, Michael Penix Jr., probably, or at least in my opinion, the best wide receiver duo in the nation, and maybe even the closest thing we've seen to the 2019 LSU passing game. Yes, that's how good they are. Rome Odunze is over 900 yards this season with 7 touchdowns, averaging 17.8 yards per catch. And then Polk, the number 2 receiver on that team, has 836 yards and 7 touchdowns, 18.2 yards average. I mean, that's legitimately like that, bro. That's Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson in terms of production out there. And Michael Penix wearing purple, that number 9. They're spinning it out there out west. Talk to me, Ron.
I'm not going. I'm sorry.
Bro, not going?
Bro, I've been fooled by Michael Penix before. I've been told that Michael Penix was going to beat the Buckeyes before, bro. I've seen this movie.
I lived this before.
I'm not going, bro. Like, I seen you. I know who you are. We played. I'm not going. We saw them struggle against Arizona State. I'm just not. I just don't see it. If you were able to be stifled by a team like that, I feel like the elite athletes on Ohio State's defense with the combination of Jim Knowles' knowledge and scheme, I feel like they would find a way to stifle them, especially if they had bowl prep or the college football playoff lead up to prepare for them. I just think there's too much talent on the defensive side of the ball, and I feel like Ohio State's defense would win out between those two elite units.
Bro, Washington is so tricky because their offense is so good. But then they put up a stinker like they did, only scoring 15 points 2 weeks ago.
So what is your response to people that say, I just watched you only put up 15 points against Arizona State? Yes, we've seen them do it, but what happened in that game that prevents them from doing it again?
I don't know. I don't have a real good answer for you because I don't think Arizona State's that good. I mean, I know they're not that good. Everybody else has been able to do their thing on Arizona State. So for Michael Penix, who I had as the Heisman frontrunner, to only be able to score 15 points in that game when the two guys I just compared to Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, the college edition, it's weird because that makes me feel like you are a streaky shooter. Like you are Lou Williams, you are Jamal Crawford. When you are on, when you're on, you're Allen Iverson. When you're off, you're Lance Stevenson, and I don't know what we're gonna get, and it's very confusing. They do terrify me in large part because I think they have 2 true wide receiver ones, and at times we've seen Davis and Igbenogson sometimes struggle against guys who are a little bit twitched up. So for that reason, they worry me. But at the same time, it's like I also watch you struggle against Arizona State. I'm not going to ignore that. But they do have what may be the best individual win in the entire country, and that win over Oregon. Even though, honestly, they should have lost that game if it weren't for Dan Lanning and those meddling kids.
So does Washington have the best quarterback of the college football contenders that we are discussing? I just put the poll in the chat. Who has the best quarterback out of the college football contenders? We have Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Oregon as the options.
I think it's pretty easily Washington. I think they have the second best quarterback in all college football if you're just looking at performance. The first being Jaden Daniels, who plays for LSU, who, they have 2 losses, so they probably won't compete for a title. But I think it's Michael Penix. Like that's how good he is. And I think Michael Penix has the best receiver unit. Like, is their receiver unit better than Ohio State's? Is it better than Texas? To me, it's a yes. What about for you?
I was going to ask you, I'm sitting here thinking about, we were just talking about Arizona State. I was going to follow up with if Chip Trayanum and Jaden Daniels are still at Arizona State.
Crazy.
Did Washington lose that game?
Crazy. And Johnny Wilson, who we're going to talk about here in a sec, that's over there at Florida State, that's also balling.
If I am at Arizona State right now, I got to be looking around the locker room like, bro, we got to have they couldn't have left because the parties weren't any good. Like, that's all they do at Arizona
Facts.
State. So why did they
Facts.
like, how's the football program been so bad that the Arizona State parties can't even keep an elite quarterback there?
It is wild. He really, I mean, I believe he beat Justin Herbert too as a youngin and then left. And now he's down there balling, and he's got a win over him. And then he's got some big time wins on his docket, man. A win over Bama too. I mean, very good players. We also forgot about Ricky, the Florida receiver as well. Ricky Pascal, who is another guy for Arizona. I mean, they had a really skilled offense. I don't know. I mean, for me at least, when I look at them, Washington, at least, I think they have the best receiver unit, Ron. I think they do. But I think they could struggle stopping the run game, especially with a defense rate that's at the top 30.
That's another poll that we have in the chat. So we'll let the chat weigh in on that. Who has the best receiver core out of the college football contenders? And you know my rule, bro. You got Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, plus the South Florida Express, bro. We're not betting against it. Like that, you're not. I don't care how good your top two are. Your top two aren't better than Marvin Emeka, and your backups aren't the South Florida Express's finest. So I'm not going.
Bro, Rome is just so nasty, though, man.
It's like the homer in me, bro. I want a bucket hat
right now. And part of me is like, I love watching Rome play football, and the Polk kid is also just absolutely balling at this point. And that's a matchup that if the college football playoff were to start today, that would not be the matchup. Actually, the matchup would be against Florida State. Let's talk about them. FSU. They also got dudes.
Absolutely. We have Jordan Travis and Lathan Ransom on the graphic. I wanted to ask you, how do you think the Buckeyes secondary matches up against these wide receivers?
They would absolutely need Lathan Ransom to be there. They would need Lathan bad because of how good the two receivers are. Keon Coleman almost doesn't get enough love, and part of that may be my fault. He's 6'4" from Big Ten country. Shout out to Big Ten. He's got big-time thighs. He's very, very quick. 6'4", but can run every single route in the route tree. Got some freaky ball skills. I mean, we saw the one-handed catch. And also, down there at Florida State, they let their most exciting, explosive players return punts, and he's been a problem on punt return too, and he's been able to really do some damage. So that would be a really big-time matchup, but I think Ohio State's style of corners are the best matchup for those two wide receivers. I think that those two wide receivers maybe aren't as complete as the Washington duo, but they're big and physical, and I think our whole defensive back room is super physical. Johnny Wilson, I don't know what he's going to be at the next level, but at 6'7", he's a jump ball. He's got his PhD in the jump ball. And Keon Coleman at 6'4", another guy who they love throwing the fades to. So that would be a good matchup. I do think our defense would have Jordan Travis, though, in a blender.
Yeah, that matchup worries me a bit. It makes me think about the James Franklin press conference. You ever think about just throwing the ball up to him down there? I promise you, Florida State would absolutely just throw the ball up to him. Yes. He's Johnny Wilson, 6'7", going up against Denzel Burke and David Igmanosin, who's around the height 6'1". We talked about this. We talked about this last week previewing the game. It's like Chris Paul covering LeBron James. Like, what are we doing out here? I mean, if you want to try, go ahead, but I don't know how that's going to work out for you. The size on the outside definitely does worry me with that Florida State team. I do think the Buckeyes would be able to get after them, and I think the Buckeyes would be able to run the ball on them. So I think with their ability to control them, and if they're able to limit the explosive play, I feel like the Buckeyes would be able to have success against this Florida State team, and it's lower on the list of some of the teams that worry me out of these college football contenders.
The more I think about it, bro, Florida State strikes zero fear in my heart, bro, because think about it. They got taken to deep waters by Boston College and Clemson.
I know we're not disrespecting the Fighting Jeff Halfleys.
We're not, because they still have a path to win the ACC, in case you didn't know. What I will say is we're talking about teams that are college football playoff contenders, and their defense, while at times has been pretty good, at times it's been a leaky tire and the air gets out. And you don't want to be a leaky tire with Marvin Harris Jr. out there, because if you cut him loose for one single play, he will hurt you, and that's 7 points. And I promise you, your leak and busted coverage it's going to be harder to make up because our defense is better than that defense. So Florida State's a little tricky. Florida State's tricky because they do have the receiver play, but honestly, on defense, they couldn't stop a runny nose, and they honestly should have lost to Clemson if we're keeping it a beam.
You talked about your concerns with Florida State's defense. Which defense do you think out of these contenders that we've discussed has the best defense? On the poll that we just put in the chat, we have Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, and Oregon. Did I forget someone? Should someone else made that list, or you think those are the top 4 out of the 7 we're discussing today?
No, I think that's the top 4. Honestly, it's funny because Michigan hasn't faced the top 100 offense yet. So to me, they're disqualified because if we're
not for cheating.
Smooth. Okay. Saying if we're all taking an algebra test and you're doing times tables over there, I'm not going to say that you're better at math than the other people that are doing the algebra test. You got me?
Yeah, I feel you.
Like we're doing calc and you're doing 4 times 4. We're not the same. And so I disqualify. Now, I'm not saying the kid that, is doing 4x4 doesn't know how to do the calculus. I just haven't seen it yet, so I'm not going to bet on it. I think likely the best defense is Alabama's defense. They have about 30 sacks. I believe only one team has scored more than 30 points on them. They've done a good job. I mean, Caleb Downs is getting better and better and better every week. Kool-Aid McKinstry is the best corner in the entire country. And Dallas Turner is going to finish the year with 13, 14 sacks minimum. That's the best defense. And honestly, I didn't have to explain it that much to get there. But that's the best defense of the contenders in my eyes, other than Ohio State.
Yeah, I had Ohio State in the poll. That's my vote. I think they're the best unit in the country. So we know we're going Buckeyes there.
No, absolutely. Got to talk about it, man. Michigan, how do you think Ohio State stacks up against them? And this is a cool one because they got to run into us. They got to see us out there. They got to see us outside, even though it is in Ann Arbor. Obviously,
do they?
Michigan, at this rate, who knows? Because and there's rumors about the Big Ten getting involved and coming down with the hammer, waiting for the hammer. But if the hammer doesn't come, where you at? Ohio State, Michigan.
Ryan Day and revenge games. Don't bet against them. I know we said that last season and went out there and got blurred. They might have been cheating.
But they do the signs.
Huh? They do the signs, I think. Maybe, allegedly. No, but I honestly just don't see. I mean, you see the look on Ryan Day's face in his graphic, and that's not by mistake. I feel like Ryan Day, after his first loss to the team up north, I still think he didn't quite get it. Ohio State fans were furious, and he's like, it's just one game. You don't win all of them. It's his first Big Ten loss, and then he lost again. And people were ready to fire him. Like, there were people calling for Ryan Day's job after the second loss. And I feel like that really instilled the seriousness, importance of that win. And I just don't see the Buckeyes losing that to them again. I feel like it'll be another grinded out game. And I think the biggest difference in last year's game was the explosive plays. And everybody's like, it was only 5 or 6 plays that changed the course of the game. And when Jim Knowles came in, 5 or 6 explosive plays, you can expect that every game. We have not given up a play over 40 yards the entire season. And if they're able to play a game like that and demand that J.J. McCarthy be a game manager and be safe with the ball and drive them up and down the field for an entire game, I just don't think they'll be able to do it. And I feel like the Buckeyes would be able to find a way to get it done in Ann Arbor this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep it a beam, bro. Out of everybody in the top 5, Michigan scares me the least. They're going to get blurred this year by Ohio State. It's not going to be very close. In Ann Arbor, there's going to be however many thousand Sun fans because I don't think Michigan is in the realm of Ohio State. I don't think they're not tougher. They don't have better skill. They aren't as well coached. They're not as talented. I think they get blurred. I worry more about Oregon. I worry more about Florida State. I worry more about Bama. I worry more about Texas. Michigan strikes zero fear into my heart. So, I think they're going to get blurred. I think they struggle to score 10 points. So, again, Michigan, zero concerns at all. I mean, as soon as your quarterback throws 3 interceptions against the 5th best team in Ohio, I'm out on you. And that was Bowling Green. So,
that's crazy disrespect for Bowling Green, but we're low on time, so I'm just going to let it go.
And then it's the big dog. It's the rematch. It's Georgia.
The final get-back game. I mean, it felt like every team that we put up on here, it feels like get-back because the Buckeyes have smoke for them, and Marvin Harrison Jr. wants his revenge on Javon Bullard.
and he's going to get it if they play. He will. Now, it's funny because I think Georgia and Ohio State are more similar than people realize. I think, quarterback play-wise, Carson Beck is just slightly better than Kyle McCord. I do think Georgia is more talented, and Georgia is the team that I worry about the most in the entire country. It would probably go Georgia 1, Oregon 2. And there's the teams that I think could beat Ohio State. They're a well-oiled machine at this point, and as soon as Kirby Smart made the line, or like whoever, we just keep coming back. I'm like, gee whiz, like y'all got it. Y'all definitely got it. So Georgia's the team, man. Georgia's the team. They should. I wouldn't have been mad if they're ranked number 1. Everybody in college football is chasing them as a program, but I do think Ohio State this year would match up decently against them. It definitely wouldn't be the 40 ball we saw last year. This game, if it happens, has all the makings of a 17-24 classic.
Yeah, I think this Georgia defense isn't as strong as we've seen in years past, but this Buckeye defense is absolutely elite. I think like you said, I think it would be a close game, a defensive classic. And I feel like it's hard to bet against the Bulldogs until you see them lose. It feels like we're watching a LeBron type run where it's like, this dude's in the finals every year. Like, will he ever stop? And it doesn't seem like Georgia has any intentions on stopping. We got one more poll here, and it's going to be the final question before we get out of here. Which team presents the biggest challenge to Ohio State winning the national championship this year? We got Michigan, Georgia, Washington, or other.
Georgia, for the reasons I stated. I mean, I think they have they're the most talented, and they also have an elite coaching staff. Defensively, they're simple but very physical and real good. And that's the one team that I think could stop the run game. And I think this Ohio State team needs to be able to run the ball to get things going. So
I'm going to give a super lame nerd answer. I think it's the Michigan Wolverines because they're the team that the Buckeyes are statistically most likely to play and could upset it. And the only team that they're guaranteed to play out of all of the ones that we just named, I do think they have the best chance. They will see the Buckeyes at home. All of these other teams would have to play the Buckeyes on a neutral site. While I do think the Buckeyes find a way to get it done against Teton this year, I do still think that presents the biggest challenge, especially with that game being on the road this year. Man, Chris Drew, have we had a day. A day did we have. I appreciate Bleacher Report for having us. This was super fun. I hope all of the other fan bases we talked about today do not get too mad at us. We enjoyed being here. Chris Drew, let the people know where they could find you.
Find me every weekday on Menace to Sports, breaking stories, talking ball, breaking down games, all that, and then some on our YouTube every day at noon. And honestly, you can find me with Ron. So where do they find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at 2Ts. That's 2_TEES. You can find me Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. for the Buckeye Roast on the Best Damn Media YouTube. We have the college football pregame show on Saturdays. Me and Chris Drew every morning on the Best Damn Media, or every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. on the Best Damn Media YouTube, and our flagship show, Buckeye BS, every Sunday at 10 a.m. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and always a big thank you to Bleacher Report for having us. Go Bucks and OH.
IO.